promised in the insight, we have a food safety specialist. She wears a few other hats, and that description is not quite as accurate as it needs to be. But for all intents and purposes, basically speaking, this is what she has a lot of expertise about. And she's going to be sharing all that expertise with us tonight. The topic tonight is on food safety. How is your food grown? Starting from the seed. How is it planted? How is it looked after? How is it harvested and stored right after? How is it prepared? How is it served? On what sort of environment are you going to be consuming this food? I imagine those are some of the things we're going to be trying to answer on the conversation around food safety. But who am I? I'll leave it to the expert. Good evening, Charity.
Good evening.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Tell me and tell the Kenyans who are watching, first of all, first things first, what do you actually do?
Okay, my name is Charity Gakuo. I have a background of agronomy. Agronomy is the production of food, and later now went on and started working towards food safety. So food safety is ensuring the entire chain is safe.
Right.
So as food safety is literally described, is just to ensure, our work is to ensure that actually people consume safe food, and safe food is food that is not contaminated with either bacterial, viral, chemical, physical items that can actually make food unsafe.
All right.
That's what I do.
Brilliant.
I just ensure that your food is safe.
So we've got KDF fighting to protect the country from enemies within and without.
Yeah.
We've got the Kenya Police fighting to protect the general society and the peace. And then we've got Charity protecting what's on your plate.
Your plate.
I hope you get the kudos that you deserve. Tell me something. A lot of Kenyans right now are more focused on finding the food. Do you think enough attention is given to how safe the food is?
So that has been a line that has been very thin to actually build towards, because we are working towards sustainability. We are working to ensure that we actually have the food before it's safe. And sometimes we try to balance the two, because we talk about food being unsafe, but there is no enough. There is no food security.
Right.
So the truth is, we need to, first of all, build on food sustainability, that's food security, as we still build on food safety.
Right.
That way now you are able to convince someone that you actually need to eat food safe food when you are sure that you're going to have your plate.
I see.
So the truth is, yes, there is a possibility, or rather we might actually eat food that is not safe, because one, we have no option, or two, we do not have the knowledge of understanding how safe my food is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you said something earlier that was quite interesting to me. Your background is in agronomy, the production of food. Talk to me about how we actually plant our food. There's some concerns about that.
Okay. So every crop is dependent on what we call its anchor. So because of technology now, we have stopped relying on soil, and now people are going to water, something called hydroponics.
Yes.
Other people are depending on air, which is aeroponics. But the plant is dependent on its anchor. So in Kenya, because we have a lot of arable land, the highest percentage of anchorage of the plant is the soil.
Is the soil. Most farmers plant in the soil.
Definitely. So the problem is now this soil.
I see.
Soil is life, and this is what I mean by life. It has microorganisms. These are actually worms inside the soil that actually make the soil aeration. So soil needs to breathe. The gaseous exchange needs to occur in soil. Number two, soil needs moisture. Soil will require these microorganisms to actually produce what we're calling about the nutrition, or rather the nutrients. So what has happened over the years down this is that the soil has begun to lose life.
Right. And why is that?
men have actually contributed to the death of our soils. We're actually saying our soils are dead.
Wow.
This is because, one, we have overutilized chemical fertilizers. Chemical fertilizers are nutrient-based fertilizers, right? They only produce nutrients. They have no organic matter. They have no humus. The only thing
they have no life.
They don't have life. So the microorganisms don't have anything to feed on.
So it takes life to produce life.
Absolutely.
And the chemicals we're using do not have life in them. In fact, they kill the life.
That's the thing. So the microorganisms will lack food to feed on, and they will die. So that means your soil is not aerated. That's why you find your soil is a bit clamped up. So it's becoming even hard to plow. Your soil has no enough moisture. So you have to rely on water for your plant to grow.
Right.
And your plant, number three, your soil has no nutrients because there is no production of nutrients through something because of the humus. You know, there's the organic matter, it's broken down, and there's production of nutrients.
Right.
So we have left to over-rely on chemical fertilizers. So there's this danger because the crop grows by the nutrients. So the crop only grows by the nutrients you give. Each crop requires a certain nutrient. For example, maize requires 200 kilograms of nitrogen. So the crop will only grow to optimally if you give it 200. For example, in maize, 200 kilograms of pure nitrogen. So what is happening, because now the soil has no capability of producing its own nutrients, we are overpumping the soils with chemical fertilizers.
Right.
And this is a challenge with chemical fertilizers. They are not compatible with the soil.
Right.
So the crop will take the nutrients at that point. And this is what we do. For example, CAN will top dress twice in the season.
Right.
And nitrogen is required over a period of time. So anytime you put in the nitrogen, the maize will pick up the nitrogen it requires at that point. And the rest is leached because it's not compatible with the soil. So it's leached and goes to the water bodies.
Wow. Okay. This is starting to sound like a biological horror film.
Yes.
So here we are, in a nutshell, we're planting wrong.
That's it. So the problem is the soil.
The soil.
The soil is dead.
Okay.
That's where the unsafe food begins.
I like that. And on that particular note, I want to give our audience a little bit of a breather to absorb the information that we've just had. Folks, we are planting our food in the absolute wrong way. We are relying more on the chemicals to plant our food. It's killing our soil, and life needs to produce life. And without any life, the food we're producing becomes deadly. We'll answer that question after the break. If you are joining us right now on Insight, we are drawing insight onto the subject of food security. And my guest tonight is Charity Gakuo, who's a food specialist, particularly in the area of food safety, among other things. Now, we're following the food, the food chain, starting from, you've heard this statement, farm to fork, right? So we're doing exactly that. So we've just talked about how this food actually comes into being, the soil.
Yes.
So now the next step is the crop itself. Where does what about how we grow our crops creates a problem of food safety?
All right, so we know the quote of garbage in, garbage out. So your soil is now contaminated.
Okay.
And now your plant picks up what is contaminated.
Okay, wow.
So as your plant grows, it's now becoming toxic and becoming contaminated. Right. The problem with heavy metals is you cannot drain them away with water, after harvesting.
And by heavy metals, you mean?
The ones in the chemical fertilizers.
The ones in the chemical fertilizers.
Because you have over-fertilized. They're not producing something called so many nitrates that are now being converted into nitrites. They're toxic. They're toxic substances.
So it doesn't go away easily.
No.
It stays in the soil.
This is the same way, when we are planting with sewage water from the industries. So all these things are in your soil.
So those very healthy looking sukuma wiki are quite unhealthy.
Absolutely. So the garbage in the soil is picked up by the crop, and the crop will definitely grow to its this beautiful, nice crop. and we will definitely go harvest.
Okay.
So
now the
first step
crop
was soil. That was where you took the
soil
first
is
hazard.
contaminated.
The crop has taken up the hazard, and now you're harvesting. Now this is the third stage of hazard or toxicity. So you harvest your crop, for example, you're picking up tomatoes. One of the things that you have not observed, something we call PHI. PHI is pre-harvest intervals. So you have sprayed your tomatoes with a pesticide to control pests.
Yes.
And you need to wait for 14 days before you harvest.
Yes.
But you have harvested it at the 7th day.
Wow.
Yeah?
Earlier than you're supposed to.
Earlier than you're supposed to. The other hazard is you're actually using already prohibited pesticide in Kenya. We are having those things. Actually, I know this is one of the biggest problems.
Oh yes, it's a big
That
problem.
we are actually having pesticides that have been banned in other countries in Kenya. And we are now putting them in our food. And most of these pesticides are something we call systemic. They get right into the system of the plant. So you have harvested an already contaminated
crop
through its system. Number two, it's how you handle your food when harvesting.
Okay.
Are you harvesting and placing them on the floor? Because most of the time you'll see when you're harvesting,
we harvest tomatoes, maize, we put them on the ground.
And we sort them on the ground.
Sometimes even on tarmac.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You harvest your spinach, your cabbages, and place them on the soil. And even us who are harvesting, maybe just came out from somewhere with so many, you came from washing and there was so much detergent on you, and you actually handled food.
Okay.
So at harvest point,
contamination happens.
Lots of contamination.
Wow.
There needs to be regulation. Place them on a clean cloth. You don't have to really invest, but you just ensure that the place you're actually exposing this food is clean.
Okay.
I know the analogy of farmers is, this is what goes to the Nairobi people.
Yes.
And this is what goes to home. And so they do not care. And the problem and the notion that has come out from people is they are looking for the best white, red tomato.
Yes, the biggest ones, the ones that look good.
Nice
yes.
leafy spinach. And we are actually forcing our farmers to actually go towards that direction.
I see, I see.
Because they need money, but we are forcing them to go to a direction that actually is actually hazardous.
So they do it because of market forces?
Absolutely. Demand what the people want.
So we've got this plant. Soil is horrible. The plant has grown up in a horrible way. It's been harvested in a very hazardous way.
Absolutely.
What's the next step?
Transport.
Wow.
So the farmer needs to transport to the Nairobi children.
Right. To the market, to the cities.
Market.
Yes.
So we'll use lorries.
Okay.
I once remember there was a lorry that came to carry stones and they came to carry produce.
The same lorry?
Same lorry. So you're talking about lots of cross-contamination. We're talking about lorries that have not been well inspected and there's already shedding of paint. And this paint is chemical and it's toxic.
And it gets into the food.
We're talking about food being transported from Busia or in Kakamega, the spinach and the nice kienyeji, coming all the way to Nairobi. The dust,
the
well
elements,
covered.
Yeah, the sun, everything.
It's been a whole 6 hours of drive, and this crop has just been attracting so much dirt and contamination throughout the journey.
Wow. So the transportation, of course, is problematic.
It needs to be regulated.
It needs to be regulated.
Generally, we need to transport vegetables in a clean, in a cooler, well preserved, so that there is no contamination. If you're not able to actually get the cooler, you need to actually clean your lorry, ensure there is no deposits of paint, and ensure it's covered.
Right.
If you're bringing in seeds, for example, you may be coming up from for example, Kambani, the temperatures are quite high, so the cereals are well dried. But as you transport them towards the highland, the seeds begin to accumulate moisture.
The moisture, yes.
So what is happening? Aflatoxin. So transportation really needs to be sorted out because this is a place where we have...
It's a weak link.
Yes.
All right. So we've got this chain, and so far there's weak links across. So after transportation, what's the next step?
Retail.
Retail. It's in the markets and supermarkets and the mamamboga around the corner. What's the hazard there? What's the danger there?
I think supermarkets have really tried because well, the place is attracting a certain kind of clientele, and they're quick to clean up and ensure they produce this best crop.
Okay.
I think the highest challenge is in the open market.
Okay.
I appreciate the government is beginning to, bring up modern markets, and that is good. But there is a bit of a hitch, a challenge. There is no flowing water.
In many of our markets across the country,
Yes.
right?
So even cleaning the product is just dipping into a bucket,
Shaking it off, and that's it.
And that's it. And you're shaking it off to a place where it's already that, so you so even what was not contaminated becomes contaminated in that.
I see.
Number two, you'll find a whole dump site in a market. The rotten and
Yes.
the fruits that have gone bad are piled in a place, and there's so many rats, and that's a hazard. Number three, you'll find farmers, retailers are a bit shrewd a bit, yeah? So you realize the tomatoes are becoming degrading, and you'll want to mix the degraded one with the new one, and share it with you and sell it to your
customers,
to
unsuspecting customers.
Absolutely. And so this that was already contact, because you see, as the crop begins to degrade, there are bacteria that form into the crop and everything. So you will actually transfer what was not
Wow.
having
Charity,
a problem.
hold on. This is getting depressing. Okay, so how many more steps before it gets to my mouth?
Just one.
One more,
Yes.
which is?
Now you go to the market and
I
buy.
go to the market, I buy this thing that has gone through all these stages. Quick as you can, what are the dangers there? Now, and I hope you're paying attention, good people, and I hope you're picking up where the challenge is, and hopefully with the little time that we have left, Charity will give us some tips, some takeaways about how we can create some safety around our food. So clearly we've learnt about the soil, that we need not to overtax it,
Yes.
over-fertilize it. We've learned that garbage in, garbage out. If we put garbage in the soil or in the environment where our food is growing, then our food is going to be garbage. We've learned that it needs to be harvested properly, and as we harvest it, there's risk of making it even more toxic. We've learned that in the transportation bit, there's also problems. The vehicles we transport our food in, the environments, and all of that. We've learned that in the retail section, where we're buying and selling the food, there's lots of dangers and what we need to do about it. Now the food is at home. In our home, we've bought it, here we are, it's in our kitchens. Can you give us something that we can, some tips that we can do, things we can do to handle our food in a better way?
All right, so
because by this point we're already compromised, good people, aren't we? So how can we rescue this? How can we?
One of the greatest challenges at homes is something we call cross-contamination. Cross-contamination is transferring contaminants from one crop to another. A few tips I'll give you at home.
Okay.
Try get semi-raw vegetables.
What does that mean?
That means don't get your tomatoes when they're very ready.
So not red, like ready to be used right away.
Try get the orange just before they are ready.
Okay.
And put them on a shelf. Don't put them on the fridge. Put them on a shelf and allow them to ripen.
Okay.
This means that the pesticide that was in the tomato will begin to degrade, and you'll eat a bit safer food than before.
Okay.
Number two, wash your vegetables on running water. Don't put your vegetables on a basin and wash everything in the same
water,
because you'll cross-contaminate.
Okay. Running water, a tap.
Running water. If you do not have a tap, take a jug and just wash your vegetables on running water.
Okay.
Number three, every time you finish chopping a certain vegetable, please wash your knife. Please wash your chopping board.
Right.
Because it will avoid cross-contamination. If you were cutting your meat and it had bacteria, the bacteria will actually die when you're cooking. But if you do not wash the knife that you are cutting with your meat well and actually chop your tomatoes, then the bacteria might be transferred to the tomato. And the heat that you're exposing your tomatoes to is not the same as the heat you're exposing to your meat.
Okay.
So try and wash your equipment right after when changing to the next one.
Okay.
Number three, clean your surfaces. Just clean your surfaces.
Okay.
Sometimes the food is not dirty, but your surfaces are contaminated.
So what do you mean by surfaces? Is this the counter?
The counters, yeah.
The chopping board?
That's it. Clean your surfaces.
Right.
If you're able to, use disinfectants, but food grade disinfectants.
Okay.
Don't use soap, because hand wash soaps, bathing soaps have chemicals that are toxic to human body.
Hold on. We shouldn't use regular soap.
No, it should be food grade soap.
Food grade soap.
You'll rather not use the soap and use water, but don't use regular soap.
I think that's a really important thing, good people. Food grade soap or no soap at all.
Yes.
Okay. Any more things you can give us real quick?
Be clean, women tie your hair to avoid falling off of your hair.
Into the food.
Into the food. Wash, ensure your nails are clean. It's okay to have nice nails, but ensure your nails are, clean. If you're able to wear an apron, just do that, because what we're trying to avoid is cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination. I think that's a really good place to pause this conversation. I understand that this is a huge subject. I mean, you went to school for years for this.
Yes.
So clearly there's a lot more content.
Right.
And I understand we may not have enough time to really delve deep into it. Consider this an introduction to food safety, and we'll have Charity back here again to now delve deeper into the details, the nitty-gritties, the farmers, the transporters, the retailers, and the consumers, all of that. By the way, just before we finish, they say this is street wisdom.
Okay.
That unless your Mutura person has dirt under his fingernails, that Mutura is not sweet. So you're telling us cross-contamination.
Well, we can a bit compromise on Mutura.
Thank you so much. Now, good people, thank you so much, Charity.
Thank you so much,
Thank you for the wisdom and insight you've been able to give us tonight on Insight. We hope to have you again and give us a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, up next is the great Ahmed Bahaj, and I've seen a number of people in the studio. The show is VAR, and tonight they're talking about disciplined violence. To understand what that means, after this, my name is Victor Muyakane. Our sign language interpreter was Catherine Simaloy, and our guest tonight was Charity Gakuo. Thank you to the crew behind the scenes, Christine, Charles, Nick, and Tony, as well as Ken Kazungu and Collins, who made this bulletin a reality, as well as many others who did this. Thank you so much. Have a good night. May God bless you.